It's Steve and Evelyn from the camera store, and today we're taking a first look at the Nikon Z6 III.
This is the much anticipated Z6 III. Now, Nikon's had a very popular Z series of cameras, including the Z6 I and Z6 II, but they've been a little bit dated, we're finding, right? So this is a much anticipated update to that Z6 series.
Yeah, the Z8 and Z9 have been these amazing flagship cameras for Nikon. They've really packed a lot of features into them. And so this camera, the Z6 III, actually takes a lot of those features from the flagship models and brings it into a more compact body. Now at the core, we have a 24.5 megapixel full frame sensor. And the interesting thing here is it's a partially stacked sensor, making this have faster readout speed, better performance, and a lot of new features that take advantage of this new technology.
There is so much to talk about with this brand new camera from Nikon, so let's get into it.
What is this partially stacked sensor all about? Basically, we have a sandwich of circuitry over a 24 megapixel full frame sensor, and this is giving a 3.5 times faster readout compared to the predecessor, the Z6 II. Now, why is that important to you? Well, it's going to reduce things like rolling shutter, but I also have to mention that this sensor is paired with 8 stops of in-body image stabilization, which again is kind of this crazy level. If you're doing handheld stuff, photography, you want to have slower shutter speeds, it's going to prevent that shake that we all have naturally. The other cool thing is the image stabilization system can work based on your focusing point. So if you have your focusing point off to the side, the image stabilization is going to help correct for that subject. So that's a unique feature that the Nikon cameras that are the new generation have. I really like that. It's also going to improve your video quality as well by making it nice and smooth. So we're going to talk about video, that kind of stuff later on, but let's get into the design of this camera as well. First of all, the electronic viewfinder. Let's talk about it. This is a $5.76 million electronic viewfinder, and it is the brightest electronic viewfinder on the market. It can go up to 4,000 nits. It also has a wide color gamut, and so it's going to actually make your life a lot easier. I still really love the feel of this camera. You have a nice deep grip. For my hands, I find that this camera, I have a really good hold on it. You know, for Dave's hands, he prefers a little bit of a bigger camera, but you can add an additional grip. So that's a really nice feature. We didn't get a grip yet, but I'm excited to have that as an option, especially for people like Dave that need that extra little bit of hold on the camera. Another new feature on this camera is a fully articulating screen. And this kind of gives a little bit more of that video-centric body. I like having a fully articulating screen for a couple of reasons. One, so you can do different angles, of course, if you're doing any kind of vlogging type content. And also, I personally like being able to turn the screen in just to give you that extra protection when you're throwing it in your bag. You know, maybe you're throwing some keys in there, you really shouldn't do that, but sometimes it happens. And just like the Z6 II, I think a lot of the features, the way the design is, you have 2 custom function buttons on the front of the camera, you have the dials that you want, everything's in a good position. I like the autofocus on button, so you can do your focusing with back button autofocus, and everything just has its place, and I think it's really well done that way. Now we are also maintaining the weather sealing that you'd have from a Z8, so we have a nice rugged design with this camera as well. Now when we look at the ports of it, we actually have a full-size HDMI port, headphone jack, microphone jack, and 1 USB-C port. Now on the Z8, of course, you have 2, but with this camera, you know, you are saving a little bit of real estate by only having the 1, and you are able to charge the camera through the USB-C port as well as doing data transfer. With the memory card slots, we have a dual memory card slot just like the Z6 II. In this case, we have 1 CF Express Type B card as well as a fast UHS-2 SD memory card. So really nice compatibility here. When we look at the power for this camera, we have an ENEL15C battery. This is backwards compatible with the old batteries, but if you have some really old batteries, you can still use them. You just can't do the USB-C charging with them. So you can do that with the C and the B versions. I think the quality of this camera is the same throughout the lineup. You know, it's 725 grams, so definitely a bit lighter than the Z8. But again, the grip feels really nice. It's a really well-designed Nikon style body. And so I think that they've maintained and hit this out of the park with the design.
So what's the Z6 III like to work with? Well, we had high expectations of it. The Z8 and Z9 had very good autofocus performance, as I was expecting very similar with the Z6 III. Now, if you're stepping up from a Z6 II, you're going to see a huge improvement. If you already haven't tried out a Z8 or Z9 already, you can see that Nikon has really stepped up their game when it comes to autofocus. And the Z6 III follows very closely to what the Z8 and Z9 can produce. Now, the Z8 and Z9 have a faster processor, can do more calculations per minute, so I do find them to be a slightly bit more tenacious when it comes to tracking autofocus. But the Z6 III is a substantial leap forward compared to the Z6 II. Now, I took this camera out to two different locations. One was the zoo, which is a great place to really sort of test the animal detection and see kind of autofocus it's capable of doing. Now, while I was at the zoo, I did run through a bunch of different scenarios, including the auto subject detection to see if it would find the animal, how it did, and it generally did a very good job of it. But if I knew I was shooting birds, I would go to that autofocus profile and get even better results from that. Now, something I'm even more excited about is the ability to focus to -10 EV, but when you're using 1.2 aperture lenses. Now, it happens to be that Nikon has one of my favorite lenses out there, the 85 1.2 lens, which is an amazing portrait lens. So we took it to another place that is a little more well known for sort of lower light. We went to an indoor roller rink, which is called the House of Skate, and we met up with a model there named Jessica, who's a model who works with House of Wild Modeling Agency. We got some amazing shots of her, and we had a lot of fun. 85mm 1.2 produces some amazing results, but it really pushes the autofocus test as well because it has a very shallow depth of field, so it's kind of a torture test when it came to this new camera's autofocus system. Now, this camera is that middle of the road territory when the Nikon lineup, so it's got to be able to shoot sports in action quite fast. Now, with this camera, you can shoot in 14-bit RAW in 14 frames per second with mechanical shutter. You can step up to 20 frames per second with that new partially stacked sensor and electronic shutter. Now, if you go to straight JPEG, you can go up to 60 frames per second, and if you really want to have a lot of fun, go up to 120 frames per second, but you have to go down into the crop mode. Now, two new features on the Z6 III that the Z6 II didn't have. One is pre-burst, which is a very cool function. If you're trying to capture that very fleeting moment of some subject, as soon as this action happens, you push the button and it records up to a second prior to you pushing the button. You can scroll through those photos and capture that really crucial moment when timing is essential. Keep in mind that it's only in JPEG. The other factor that's really nice is that this is a 24 megapixel sensor, and sometimes maybe that's not enough resolution for you. Put it onto a tripod and you can use their pixel shift functionality, which will give you up to a 96 megapixel file to work with.
I'm looking for a Nikon camera, trust fund, IBIS, 6K, video. This camera does have a lot of great video features. Of course, yes, that IBIS is very important. And the 24 megapixel sensor with the partially stacked circuitry actually do improve the video capabilities of this camera. Now, this actually opens up the door to a lot of possibilities for video that the Z6 series has never had before. And this includes...
Is your Nikon Z6 II just not satisfying you anymore? For video, do you find yourself wishing that you could just capture all the great slow motion footage you wanted? Then talk to your camera store about the new Nikon Z6 III. With the new Nikon Z6 III, all your video woes will be a thing of the past, with incredible new features like 6K 60p in a 12-bit NRAW format, 6K 30 ProRes RAW, 5.4K ProRes 10-bit 422, H.265 4K 120 10-bit, and you can even capture 10 times slow motion footage with 10-bit 240p HD. Are wires too much of a hassle? Nikon Imaging Cloud services are now integrated into the Nikon Z6 III, allowing your images to be safely uploaded and sent to other storage and social media services. And with the new thermal mitigation, you will have plenty of shooting time. In testing, we found you could shoot 4K UHD 60p for up to 125 minutes before overheating. If your Nikon Z6 III is not recording video for at least 20 to 30 minutes, please consult your local videography expert. Side effects of the new Nikon Z6 III may include a barren and empty wallet, a crippling desire to never shoot 4K 30 ever again, bouts of annoyance when operating older video cameras or lesser video cameras, a severe need to own at least 2 CF Express Type B cards, and a fear of SD cards below the speed of V90. So talk to your camera store today and find out if the new Nikon Z6 III is right for you. For video.
It is pretty stacked for video. So in terms of the actual functionality of the camera, you have a lot of flexibility. First of all, we have gorgeous oversampled 4K up to 60p. You can also do 4K 120 with a DX crop. And if you want to have slow motion without a crop, you can shoot 240 in HD, and that gives you about 95% of your sensor readout. So a lot of flexibility in terms of the different formats that you can shoot, and the video that's coming out of this is absolutely stunning. Autofocus is working really well. It's nice and sticky. We're seeing some very nice results when it comes to the look of the actual picture for your video. We also have the ability to shoot in 6K up to 60p, and that's an NRAW, and you can currently only edit that in DaVinci Resolve, but DaVinci Resolve is great. You can actually get it for free, so it's a good option for people getting into editing video for the first time. Now, one thing with the microphone input that is kind of cool is it does have a direct line in option. So if you're doing like concert video work or something for a church or a function where they do have a soundboard, you can do the direct line in. So this is going to give you more balanced audio and be able to have it match what is coming through the board. The only thing that it doesn't really shoot is true open gate. So you do have a lot of flexibility in cropping in terms of the resolution, but that's one thing that it doesn't have. You also don't have redundancy to the memory cards, so you have to choose which one you want, but you can't shoot both, so you can have a backup. So if you're doing something special, you might still want to run a second camera. I want one, Dave. I do. I think this is a really nice body. It's not super big. It's easy to travel around with. I love a lot of the Nikon Z series glass. And I think this does a lot of things that I would want in like an everyday camera that I could bring around with me. I'd be fine bringing it to a client shoot. You know, it kind of checks all of those boxes.
It is that jack of all trades, middle of the road camera, right? That's right in that nice price point. That's very affordable for a lot of people. Now, I found myself liking the Z8 a little bit more, but it's a lot more money to get into the Z8. This offers 90% of what the Z8 has to offer when it comes to autofocus and the performance of the camera in a much more affordable body.
Yeah, it does a lot of things that are in this price bracket that Nikon needed to do to kind of bring the Z6 series up to speed. It definitely was feeling a little bit dated, and they needed to do this. And I'm glad that they didn't take away a lot of features. They're bringing down a lot of stuff that's from their more flagship cameras. And so that this is, you know, a fully featured camera that a lot more people have access to because it has that more affordable price point.
I mean, adding the IBIS is a huge factor, but the usability side of things, the viewfinder is gorgeous on this camera.
Oh,
that's something
so
you're using all the time, and that's a fantastic option Nikon's put into this camera.
Yeah, we were talking about today when we were shooting that, you know, the experience is so important, and like when you're having a good experience with your camera, it's going to make you take and create better imagery because you're enjoying yourself, you're having a good time, you're able to see what you're doing, and I think that's super important. But of course, we want to know, what do you guys think of this camera? What do you think of the Z6 III system, the developments that we've seen from Nikon? Is there anything that you feel that they missed on this?
And is there one particular feature that you're especially excited to explore on the new Z6 III?
It's been Dave and Evelyn from the camera store. We'll catch you again very soon.
Hey, thanks for sticking around and watching this video on the brand new Nikon Z6 III. If you want to check out more of our recent content, click up here. And if you're Canadian, you want to shop local, check out thecamerastore.com down here.